After a 2-year-long consultation process with the UN body, the International Labour Organization, the state of Qatar has announced sweeping reforms in the way employees are treated in the Gulf state. Some of the changes include the introduction of a minimum wage of 1,800 Qatari riyals, around $500 a month, which includes an allowance for food and accommodation. There's also freedom of movement between employers without the need for what's called a no-objection certificate. The law applies to all expat employees in the country, including domestic workers employed by individual families. There's concern that previous laws in place to protect workers haven't been enforced properly. Local media have reported that some construction workers weren't paid for months at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The International Labour Organization says the new laws will be enforced and there will be more outlets to resolve labour disputes.
We had to jointly with the state of Qatar study its impact, its preparations, and ensure that it's beneficial for all, including workers, the private sector, and the country. So a lot of groundwork had to be done. Also, the legislative changes, the actual law had to be prepared. But also, when it comes to the minimum wage, there actually has to be a study done on the needs of the workers.
Qatar's largest expat populations come from Bangladesh, Pakistan, the Philippines and India. The government says that the minimum wage will be beneficial to both employees and the country.
This is part of a bigger picture, the reforms. First, laws are very good. These two major announcements today are fantastic for the country, but implementation is equally as important. So we will be working with the government here, ensuring that the labor inspectors are fully aware of the legislation, making sure that the workers are aware, making sure that the enterprises, companies, the private sector is aware.
Qatar is hoping these reforms will also address concerns in the run-up to the Football World Cup in 2022. Human rights groups have highlighted various issues about workers in the country that include deaths on construction sites and inadequate living conditions. In the last 6 years, 34 workers have died during the construction of World Cup stadiums. That's brought a lot of attention from the international community on Qatar. Now, these labour law reforms are partly the way of dealing with that international pressure. However, the closer we get to the World Cup in 2022, the more bright the international spotlight will shine. Imran Khan, Al Jazeera, Doha.
Well, let's bring in Sharon Burrow now, who's the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. She's via Skype from Brussels. Thank you very much, Ms. Burrow, for being with us on Al Jazeera. So what do you make of these new decisions announced by the Qatari government? A new minimum wage, first of all, for all employees and domestic workers, not based on nationality, as was the case in the past. How significant is this for the region?
This is a new dawn for workers, migrant workers in Qatar, to have a free system, to end the kafala system and normalise contracts with appropriate provisions, to have a backup system of a labour court and grievance procedures, representation at the workplace, but then to have a non-discriminatory minimum wage on top of that. We are delighted to see the courage and the leadership of the Qatari government. It's been a long journey. We thank the ILO and the government for their dedication to this. And frankly, it will make the World Cup a much more secure environment for workers, knowing that they have secured a normalised industrial relations system.
Right. The no objection certificate requirement to change jobs for employees has been eliminated, and this will now allow people to change jobs more easily. But as we've seen in the past, it's not always easy to implement this. How does the Qatari government make sure this is enforced and that companies and employers respect their obligations?
Well, this is no different to any other country. You have to have the laws in place and you have to have the grievance procedures with, in this case, a labour court, where employers can be held to account. There's no doubt there will still be disputes. That's the same in every country. But now we are confident with the laws in place, the labour courts in place, that workers will be able to get justice where, in fact, the laws are breached. I am so delighted for migrant workers who've struggled with us for years and years to get this done. and, of course, to a government that was prepared to enter a partnership with the ILO and the ITUC, I can only hope that the other Gulf states now will follow suit, end the modern system of slavery, put in place an industrial relations system where workers matter.
I was going to ask you about that, in fact, the rest of the region. You talked about the fact that this will probably help deflect criticism of Qatar ahead of the World Cup in 2022. But do you see other countries in the region following suit?
Not yet. We see some movement in Oman, in Kuwait. A little bit of hope was there in Bahrain, but it's looking very bleak. And, of course, we're in discussions ahead of the G20 with Saudi Arabia. But until we see them recognise that the kafala system must be ended, that a transparent system of contracts, a minimum living wage, and, of course, the right for workers to be represented and to settle grievances. When those things are in place, then we will say this region is fit for business. But Qatar certainly reaches that benchmark today. Of course, there are things we'll continue to talk to them about. We'll continue to defend workers where they are actually at the plight of unscrupulous employers. But this is a fantastic, historic moment. And congratulations to all involved.
And so what does this mean then for migrants who want to come to Qatar and this region? Do you think this will be, this will make Qatar more attractive for them now? And will the destination countries perhaps change their policies towards some of their people coming to this region?
I think there can be no doubt about that. And also this enables a domestic labour market, of course, still predominantly migrant workers. But it enables the normalisation of people moving to and from jobs in a domestic labour market, as well as, of course, contracts for migrant workers in other countries where necessary. So all in all, it should be good for workers. It certainly should be good for business. And it puts Qatar in a different category in terms of its respect for the workers who help make them, Qatar, the strong nation they want to be.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Ms. Burrow. Sharon Burrow is the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, joining us there from Brussels. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.